recording? Okay. Tuesday night, internet people, what up? I'm Pastor Paige.
And I'm Pastor John. Where are you from, Pastor Paige?
I'm from Waseca, Minnesota.
I'm from Owatonna, Minnesota, and we're tired, clearly. It's Tuesday night. It's about 10 o'clock here in Pittsburgh, full day, and we actually have stuff to share with you today, which is exciting. Not like we didn't have stuff to share with you yesterday, but more exciting things. So if yesterday was about agreeing to sort of rules and regulations for the assembly, today we got a lot of introductions to the things that we will be talking about and voting on in this assembly. And one of the first things we learned about was where the money that congregations send to the ELCA, where it goes and what it's going to support. And one of the things we learned about is new congregations that are being started, and they shared with us a story that I thought was pretty meaningful. There's a new ELCA congregation in the Nebraska State Penitentiary, and it's a new church for both inmates and the community.
Yep.
And so people from the community come into the church, and people who are at the prison there. And one thing that I thought was interesting is inmates that have been released from prison keep coming back to the church because that's the place where they feel welcome and feel at home. And they have said that the message of God's unconditional grace and love and forgiveness has been transformative.
One of my favorite quote was, they said, there's the passage about nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. And the pastor of this church said, it was something about wire fences or something can separate you from the love of Christ. So even behind these fences, behind these walls, Christ's love
breaks in.
He breaks in. So very neat.
So there's a video about that hopefully the ELC will be putting out publicly, and we will share that with you. But for those of you who send money to the ELCA, it goes to those sorts of things. Congregations that can't support themselves but are needed in these areas. Another thing that they brought up was young adults and global missions.
And that is Young Adults and Global Missions, or as we sometimes call ourselves, YAGM, is a group that I was a part of after I graduated from college, and it is for 18 to 29-year-olds who would like to do a year of service abroad somewhere. And it's a program of the ELCA, and we work with these partnering churches or organizations in other countries. And I was lucky enough to have dinner with some of my fellow alums and also youth in the ELCA who are interested in an experience like this where they can learn about the world and the church and then bring that back home and apply that to their vocations here.
Yeah, so if any of you who are watching are 18 to 29-year-olds or know of an 18 to 29-year-old who might be interested in this, look it up, Young Adults in Global Mission through the ELCA. It's a great program that we advocate for. What were some of the other things we talked about today?
We talked about, I know, I feel like we've done so much.
Well,
elections. Yes.
We did talk about the elections, yeah. So we are electing a lot of different people. We're electing people to the church council, a new secretary, and a new presiding bishop. And the presiding bishop election has kind of taken a turn, it feels like. Would you agree?
I don't know.
Okay.
I guess I didn't have any expectations. So
well,
for
I
me,
came in with expectations.
Yes.
As we said, Bishop Mark Hansen is up for re-election, and he got 440 votes in the first ballot. But then in the second ballot, his number of votes went down by about 100, and there was a bunch of other people whose names were being lifted up. And so as of right now, there are about 5 candidates that are being considered for presiding bishop. And so it's exciting, it's unknown, and we have our next vote tomorrow morning. And so we'll kind of keep you up to date on what's going on there.
Look who we found.
Diane Jacobson, Professor Diane Jacobson.
Right.
She was a professor of Old Testament at Luther Seminary. She taught me Hebrew.
Great Hebrew student.
Stop. Diane is here with us. She wants to introduce you to the Book of Faith initiative, which has actually been around for a while.
It has been around for 6 years. It was supposed to be a 5-year initiative, and this very day, the Churchwide Assembly voted to make it a permanent part of the ministry of the ELCA.
So tell us, what is the Book of Faith initiative?
The Book of Faith initiative, more than anything else, is a vision that Scripture is important to us and is our first language of faith.
Hmm.
And that it invites all of us to think, how can we live into that? How does God speak to us in Scripture? How do we speak to each other around Scripture? So it invites us, our tagline is open Scripture, join the conversation.
Okay.
I like that.
That what it's about is entering into conversation with Scripture and with each other around Scripture, and that somehow God's in the room there.
Great. So what has the Book of Faith been helping congregations and congregation members do?
Okay. One, thinking through that often Scripture engagement is about good questions and not only about true answers.
Okay.
It's about different ways of reading Scripture, that sometimes you approach it devotionally, and that everybody in the room has wisdom about the text, which is really true.
Great.
And that sometimes there are historical questions that really help you dig in the text, and sometimes your literary questions, how the Bible's written, not just what it says, but how it says it, is really important. And then we approach Scripture with deep Lutheran insights about how Scripture works in our lives.
Great. So it sounds like it's going to be around for a while.
It's going to be around for a while.
Excellent,
Wonderful.
excellent. So we'll look forward to hearing more from the
Yes.
ELCA about the Book of
Yes.
Faith and
Absolutely.
more from you, hopefully.
And joining
Well,
the
thank you.
conversation.
All
Yes.
right.
Well, this is very cool.
Yes,
Thanks for being here.
I love
Thanks for
it.
being
I
here.
love it.
You know, there was one other thing that I remember about today that we got to talk about. They started to introduce the new social statement on criminal justice called Criminal Justice Hearing Our Cries.
Right.
And that was really interesting.
Hey,
So,
Paige and John.
oh,
Are you guys
hi.
talking about the
Oh.
social statement of criminal justice? Can I join you?
Hey,
You know, I was kind of wondering why you
Yeah.
guys hadn't
You
invited me.
found us
Hi.
here, huh?
I did. Yeah. How you doing?
Good.
Are we on?
we're
We
on.
are.
Yeah.
You timed
everybody.
it just.
Yeah, the social statement of criminal justice. You wanted to talk about that?
Well, you seem really excited about it. So what do you remember? Anything?
Well, again, it's a serious document.
It is.
Yes,
it
it
is,
is, actually.
And it's very interesting that the second part of that, the subtitle, "Hearing Our Cries," is so central to the statement because it's about reconciliation. And one of the big problems that this task force has uncovered is the problems that incarcerated people have once they get out of prison. That is one huge thing, that they carry that stigma for the rest of their lives. And that how we can make a difference is to share in that suffering with them, and by our sharing in that suffering, we will get to know more and more about how that feels and help them get out of that. The other thing I found really interesting about our social statement of criminal justice is the problem of privatization of prisons. Prisons for profit, and how that is skewing the care and the reconciling of people in prison. What's the term we use for that? Reform.
Reform.
Yeah. That the concept of reform is tossed out so often when the prison is run by a private
Right.
entity.
So what you're saying is that when prisons become private organizations, they essentially rely on crimes happening to remain a
They
business.
do. They do. And probably what is worse is that the state, the government, which is represented by all of us, that's us, we are usurping our responsibility to care for these people and giving them over to a private industry who doesn't have their best interest in mind.
Right.
That when we incarcerate somebody, we truly have their best interest in mind to reform them. And that gets lost
Yeah.
with a private prison.
Absolutely.
So it's a big, big concern.
Yeah.
And truly, it sounds like leadership in Washington may be listening to this debate and are eager to see what we come up with as a church.
So what's the point in the ELCA putting out a social statement like this? I mean, is it just words, or what's supposed to happen after something like this gets adopted?
Well, there are some resolutions, some implementing resolutions, but it will seem like they don't have a lot of teeth in them. That will have to come in time. first of all, a social statement is a teaching document.
Okay.
And secondly, it's a document to guide us in conversation.
Right.
It's a conversation starter in the public. So we think that's what it will do.
Yeah.
And it'll be the first of its kind.
Okay. So what I think we've been hearing a lot about is that the United States is number one in incarcerated persons. And so we have too many people in our prisons. And really what this statement says is that the penalties have been really too harsh in comparison to other countries. Am I right?
I don't know too much, but maybe they don't match the crime.
Sure.
So depending, a lot of countries I know, say depending on what your crime was, may decide how we, punish.
Okay. Punish that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so really what the social statement does is it also, like you said, it teaches us about things that maybe we don't know about as
Correct.
the ELCA, some problems or injustices that are going on.
And in fact, we as the ELCA will be a social teacher to all of society. It's more than just a document for ourselves. It'll be a document for all of our culture.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. Yeah.
Great.
So it's a very important matter.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being our
Yeah,
representative
right.
for
Thank you for being
here.
the social statement on criminal
So
justice.
I suppose you want to carry on. Should I climb out of the set?
I don't think we could end with anything better than you.
Oh, Paige, you both of you are so kind. Thank you for having me
Yes.
on.
Thanks-
I'm
thanks
glad
for-
you
thanks
asked
for
me.
being
Oh
here.
yeah,
I'm glad you invited me.
We were hoping you would find us.
Right. All right. We're out again. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.